Good day, everyone. Senior high school student, statistics and probability, week 1 guide for illustrating random variable. What time is it? It's module time. So for this given segment, senior high school student, pinorm ni sir to para makapagsagot kayo prior to our meeting kahit pa paano ng self-learning modules natin. Kasi aside with this special video lesson, meron pa akong i-upload na video lesson for this given week na mag-tackle about do sa mga topics natin for this given week. So, I have number 1 question or condition. You have to classify each random variable as discrete or continuous variable. So, I have some examples of random variable and we will classify this given whether it is discrete or continuous. So, for number 1, number of COVID-19 patient at Caloocan City Medical Center. So for number 1, is it discrete or continuous? Obviously, for number 1, it is more on a discrete random variable. Why discrete? Because we can express this given in the form of whole number. Diba? When you talk about the number of COVID-19 patients, diba? Let's say for this given hospital, we have 50 COVID-19 patient every day. Diba? We cannot express this COVID-19 patient in the form of fraction or even with decimal. So for number 2, you have the temperature in National Capital Region. Temperature in National Capital Region is an example of a continuous random variable. Why continuous? Because you need an apparatus for you to be able to measure the temperature of the given region, and also you can express this given temperature with decimal and fraction. Let's say for the temperature of the given region, you have 30.5 degree Celsius. So for number 3, the amount of gasoline consumed by a motorcycle is an example of a continuous random variable. So why continuous? Diba when you talk about the amount of gasoline, we can express the amount of gasoline in the form of liters. Since it is in the form of liters, we can also express this given with decimal or even fraction. Let's say you have 2.5 liters of gasoline, di ba? Hindi naman siya as in whole number lang. And then, you have the first quarter grade in general mathematics. So, ito yung first SEM subject nyo. So, for this given part, it is more on a discrete random variable. So, why discrete? Di ba? For every grading period, naka-express or naka-round off yung grades natin into the nearest whole number. Although we can have a decimal in terms of grades, especially in the average, but usually for every quarter, we can only have an exact amount of grades for a given subject. And then last one, you have the number of attendees in the online session. It is more on discrete. Why discrete? Discrete in the sense because we are talking about of number of people. Diba? We cannot have 0.5 or even 1/2 people attending in our online session. So meron tayong problem, especially for post-test or even pre-test and other part of the module that is quite related with our lesson for the classification of the random variable. So next one, you have an experiment. So we need to toss a pair of coin 2 times in the air and observe the outcome. So these are the following questions or follow-up for this given experiment. Number 1, you have to list down the possible outcomes. When you say outcomes, this is more on the result of the given experiment or for every trial. Then what is the sample space? These are the list of the possible outcomes or the total possible outcomes. And then possible values of the random variable x. So for this given part, we will set yung value ng head natin for the random variable x. And lastly, what is the probability that 2 tosses of a pair coin will result into, let's say we have the different condition like having 2 heads as a result, 1 head, and then you have 0 head. So for us to be able to answer yung mga ganitong type ng problem, aside with our formula for the probability, all you have to do is to construct a table. So let's say for this given table, you have the possible outcomes for the first column, followed by the values of the random variable x. Let's say again, we will count up the number of head based on the result of our given experiment or trials for the given experiment, and then you have the probability of the random variable x. So for the first problem, again, we need to list down the possible outcome. Assuming that we will toss a coin, ito yung mga possible outcomes natin. Let's say we will have head and tail and head, and then you have tail and tail. So, ayun na rin yung magiging answer natin for the item number 1. So, we can express yung mga terms na yon into its abbreviation form. Let's say yung head natin, i-represent ko na lang siya as H, and then yung tail natin, i-represent ko na lang siya as letter T. And then, for the values of the random variable, as I said a while ago, before pala yan, let's say, um, alamin muna natin yung number of possible outcomes or the sample space of this given problem. So for this part, ang sample space natin is more on 4, di ba? Based on this table, we have we have the 4 total possible outcomes. And then, for the second column, values of the random variable x. Ang gagawin lang natin dito, we will have to determine yung number of head for every possible outcome. Let's say for the first part, we will have 2 since meron tayong dalawang head for this given. And then, next natin, we will have 1 since we have 1 head for head and tail combination. And then you also have 1 and then you will have 0 for the tail and tail. And then for this given part, we will just copy etong values natin for the random variable x doon sa third problem natin. So, enclose lang natin siya with the brace. So, we will have 0, 1, and 2. These are the possible values of the random variable x. And then, we will try to answer yung last problem natin. So, ano yung mga probability? So, for this given part, we have 1 over 4. So, ito yung first part, di ba? Assuming na ito sa given coin and then you have 2 heads. So, for this part, di ba, isa lang naman yung combination having 2 heads and then applying the formula for the probability. So, meron tayong 4 possible outcomes. So, it is more on 1 over 4. And then, pag 1 head naman yung pinag-uusapan natin, we can have 2 over 4 or 1 half. Why 2 over 4? Kasi, diba for this part, you have head and tail. So, head and tail represent 1 over 4. The same with tail and head, you will have 1 over 4. But since related naman sila with one another or na-interchange lang yung position, di ba? We can add 1/4 and 1/4 to obtain 2/4 and we can simplify this given into 1/2 kasi normally when we have an answer in the form of probability in fractional form, we will try to express itong mga given natin in simplest form or lowest term. And then lastly, for 0 head, we will have 0. We will have 1 over 4 since isa lang naman yung result natin having tail and tail and the rest, hindi na siya ganon. And we will try to divide this given by 4. So, 1 over 4. So, may mga ganitong problems tayo sa self-learning modules natin. So, you have to dito, see na lang yung mga situations po na yan. The next natin, you have let x be the number of typographical error found per page in a certain book. The table below shows the probability distribution of x. So there are some problems naman na we will have to fill in yung given blank assuming na meron na tayong table na i-create or meron ng table na na-create. Like for example, in this case, let's say we will have a value of x. Say you have 0, 1, and 2, 3, and 4. And then you have the probability of x. You have 0.5, 0.15, and then the number which is unknown or yung part that which is unknown, and then you have 0.15 and then you have 0.10 or 0.10. So for this given problem, let's go back dun sa ruling natin. 'Di ba? Ang common ruling kasi natin, especially for this type of problem, kailangan alam mo yung property ng given table natin. Like for example, in this case, the sum of the probability of x should be equal to 1. The sum of this given should be equal to 1. Since meron tayong unknown dito, instead of having the addition process, gagawin natin siya more on subtraction kasi ang maximum result of this given probability will be 1. So, ganito lang yung maging situation natin. Since the question is, what is the value of this given if x is equal to 2? So, meaning to say, yung nasa baba ng 2 yung hinahanap natin. So, for this part, in order for us to answer this given, di ba, as I said, sabi ko nga kanina, itong part na to, di ba, ito na yung maximum total natin for the probability of all situation. And then, we will just copy itong part na to itong mga part na to, and then we will try to add itong mga part na yan, and then we will enclose with an opening close parenthesis, and then we will try to subtract. Then by substitution and by simplification, we will arrive with 1 minus 0.9 equals to 0.1 or 0.10. And if you are using calculator, 0.1 talaga siya. Pero normally, pwede naman din natin siyang express in 0.10. Ito yung mga common condition natin. So meaning to say, ito yung given probability na ito yung number of typographical errors natin for that given page. And then next natin, you have follow-up question. Diba, for our problem, aside na ina-express natin siya in the form of decimal, we can express the probability of the given in the form of fraction. Kasi for this given, fractional part naman yung pinag-uusapan dito. So let x be the number of boys in a four-child family. The probability distribution was presented below. So what is the probability if x is equal to 3? So we have the given table again. So for the values of x, we have 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. For the probability of x, we have 3 over 16, 1 over 4, 5 over 16. Then we have the unknown, and then 1 over 16. So the same concept, the sum of the probability of x is equal to 1. So meaning to say, we will have to combine itong mga given natin, and then we will have to subtract dito sa 1 para makuha natin tong unknown. But this time around, medyo complicated na ng konti because we need to apply some concepts for fraction. So the probability of 2 is equal to 1 minus, open and close parenthesis, the probability of all values of x na nandito sa table natin. So for this part, since it is more on a dissimilar fraction, first thing na gagawin natin is we need to convert this given into similar fraction. Pero kung may calculator naman na kayo, wala na rin ang problema kasi diretso na lang to kung tutusin. Kung tutusin, for this part, yung 1 over 4 lang naman talaga yung dissimilar fraction, and then the rest, we can add directly itong mga terms natin. So by applying yung part na yon, so we will have 13 over 16. So for this part, ang ginawa kasi natin dito, itong part ng 4 na to naging 16, and then itong part na to naging 4. So 1 over 4 is the same with 4 over 16. So add lang natin yung 3 by 4 by 5, and then 1, we will arrive with 13, and then we will just copy the denominator. Hindi ko na siya nalagay sa slide natin. And then subtract 1 by 13 over 16, we will have 3 over 16. Kasi yung 1, we can express this part as 16 over 16. And then, yun na nga, subtract natin by the result of the probability of the other given. So we will arrive with 3 over 16. So for this given item, 3 over 16 ang magiging sagot natin. Next part, which of the following can be a probability distribution for a discrete random variable x? So for this given problem, we need to use yung properties natin kasi 'di ba? We have two properties. So number 1, we have the probability of each value that is between 0 and 1. So for this given part, kung babalikan niyo yung slide na binigay ko, 'di ba? It will range yung probability natin from 0 to 1, or from 0% up to 100%, or from uncertain to certain. Ayun yung mga common situation natin. And then, yung number 2 property natin, the sum of all probability is equal to 1. Itong part na to, ito na yung common rule na ginagawa ko kanina, di ba? I have to add yung mga values natin for the probability of x. So let's say meron tayong mga given distribution, or let's say meron tayong mga given table. All we have to do is to determine whether this given probability distribution is an example of a discrete or applicable for a discrete random variable. So ganito lang siya. Lagay ko lang muna yung property 1 and 2. Then tingnan natin kung magsasatisfy sila. So for first problem, for this given table, dapat daw ang probability natin will range from 0 to 1. So obviously for this given, nakikita nyo naman lahat yan pasok doon sa given interval natin since it is greater than 0 but less than 1. So meaning to say, for this given property, it will satisfy yung property number 1. But for property number 2, we will try to add or get the sum of this probability. So combine lang natin 0.10 plus 0.2 plus 0.20, 0.30, 0.15, and then 0.15. Is it equal to 1 or not? So obviously for this part, 0.3 to plus 0.3, 0.6. And then for this given part, mag-equate lang siya into 0.9 or 9/10 or 0.90. So yung proper to number 2 natin, hindi na siya magsasatisfy dito sa situation na to. Then for second table, you have this given. Lahat din pasok pa rin for property number 1 since it is a type of decimal that is enclosed dun sa given interval natin. But in terms of the property number 2, tingnan natin kung magsasatisfy pa siya. Itong part na to, 0.5 na to, 0.5. So 1.1 or 1.10. So like pa siya dun sa given property natin. So meaning to say, hindi siya magiging example ng hindi siya magiging sagot dun sa problem natin. And then for this part, yung number 3 table naman natin, will not satisfy dun pa rin sa first situation natin. Kasi pag ganito, pag hindi na kagad nag-satisfy dun sa una, yung pangalawa, more likely hindi na rin siya halos magsasatisfy. Like for example, in this case, diba, you have 1.2. Yung 1.2 kasi is more than 1 na or 120% na to. So for this given part, hindi na natin siya magiging sagot. And then, syempre try natin yung last kasi malay nyo wala namang sagot, diba? But for this given item, ay sure na syempre merong sagot. So for this part, the probability of each value is between 0 and 1. Lahat naman to pasok, diba? Lahat to pasok. And then, if we will try to add or get the sum of the probability, mag-arrive lang tayo with 1. So meaning to say, it will satisfy for both property 1 and 2. So for this part, ito yung magiging sagot natin. Itong letter D or yung third o yung fourth distribution natin. So for this given part, the last table corresponds to an example of the probability distribution for a discrete random variable of x. So you have to consider the properties. And then you have this question. Let x be the number of encoding errors of the student makes a given page. The table below shows the probability distribution of x. And then ito yung given table natin. So x is equal to 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then you have the probability of x as 0.1, 0.15, 0.2, 0.25, and then 0.3. And then, these are some of the questions. What is the probability does the student commit at least 3 mistakes? What is the probability does the student commits at most 3 mistakes? What is the probability does the student commit exactly 3 mistakes? So, obviously, in this problem, kung makikita nyo, lahat naman siya 3 mistakes. But because of the word exactly, at most, saka at least, magkakaroon tayo ng variation in terms of our explanation. Like for example, for the first problem, sabi dyan at least. Ano ibig sabihin ng at least? At least means the word minimum. So in our table, nag-start tayo with 3, di ba? So we will start with the term 3 since it is the minimum. So after ng 3, meron pa tayong 4. Mas mataas pa yun sa 3, di ba? So for this part, we need to get the probability of 3 and also the probability of 4 mistakes. So ito lang yung mangyayari. So the probability of 3 or 4 is equal to the probability of 3 plus the probability of 4. By looking at the table, itong 0.25 saka 0.30 yung dapat nating i-consider and we will have to combine in order for us to get the probability of the student commit at least 3 mistakes. Then yung pangalawang problem naman natin, when we say the word at most, meaning to say maximum. When you say maximum, dapat pababa. So for this given problem, mag-range tayo from 0, 1, 2, and then including 3. Including 3. So for this part, you have the probability of 0 or 1 or 2 or 3 is equal to the probability of 0, probability of 1, probability of 2, and the probability of 3. And then you have to combine yung mga values natin for the probability of x of each values of x. So you have 0.10, 0.15, 0.10, 20, 0.25, and all in all, you have 0.70. And then lastly, what is the probability does the student commit exactly 3 mistakes? So ganitong gagawin lang natin, tingin na lang kayo mismo sa table. So for this part, the probability of 3 is equal to 0.25. I think that's all for today, senior high school student. Just wait for may video lesson regarding sa topic na to mismo kasi ito, pinuna ko lang to para kahit paano may masagutan tayo. And I hope na yung video na to is makatulong dun sa pagsagot natin ng self-learning module. So, see you next time.